What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the channel. My name is Michael, and I hope you are having a fantastic day. We got some more oversimplified action. You guys requested that I go through the series, so I'm going to go ahead and check these videos out and go through this series. I mean, this one's about Hitler. It's oversimplified, and it is part one. We got a baby picture right here, and it's really hard to comment on a baby picture when you know that these individuals or this specific individual caused so much, kind of destruction and everything going on. That being said, history is his story, so there is some bias involved in that. But anyways, drop a like, give me some recommendations, and let's get into it.
Look at this baby. So gentle, so innocent. You'd think this child would grow up to become a good man, an honest man. Well, think again.
Oh my gosh.
Hitler was born Adolphus Hitler in 1889 in a small town in Austria-Hungary. His father, Alois Schicklgruber, was born out of wedlock, but eventually changed his name to that of his stepfather, becoming Alois Hitler. Alois was a mid-level Austrian customs officer. Not really rolling in cash, but certainly rolling in women. He married a rich, older lady, but then immediately started having affairs, including one with a much younger house servant. A few years later, he left his sick wife to be with his mistress, but since the Catholic Church didn't allow divorce at the time, he couldn't marry her. So he waited for his old wife to die and had a child in the meantime. Then his wife died, so he married his mistress and had another child, but then his new wife got sick, so he employed his much younger cousin, Clara, to take care of her. Then when his new wife died, he immediately got Clara, his cousin, pregnant, and then married her. In that order, you rock star. Clara and Alois had 3 children.
Marrying your cousin? I mean, it's not exactly the best start to say the least.
Together, who all tragically died while in infancy. So when the 4th child, Adolf, came along, Clara spoiled him rotten. The Hitlers had 2 more kids, and the family moved around a few times, meaning Adolf had to attend 5 different elementary schools. Adolf's father was strict, quick to anger, and took most of it out on the eldest son until he had enough and ran away at the age of 14, leaving 7-year-old Adolf to do most of the chores and get berated by his father. The result was a difficult relationship with his dad while he was super attached to his mother, who worried over him and his health excessively. Hitler did well in school at first.
Gosh.
His grades were good and his teachers praised him. He was popular with the other kids and enjoyed gathering them together to play war games. He also loved reading.
Isn't this like the typical childhood, though? We're seeing like a kind of a dysfunctional family. We're seeing one member of the family or one parent overly love the individual, and we're seeing the extreme of one parent basically overly punishing or overly disciplining the child. And we're kind of seeing the poles of, tension. And it causes a lot of issues that, they do manifest in your adult life. So it's interesting to see that this is the stage in basically the setting of where Hitler grew up.
And particularly liked stories about cowboys and Indians. As he grew older, though, he started to get into trouble. He was caught smoking once, organized a raid on a local orchard, tormented his pro-Austria religion teacher with symbolic gestures, displaying his allegiance to the idea of united Germanic people under a greater German state in defiance of Habsburg Austria. You know, the usual. All of this enraged Adolf's father, who punished him severely. The area of Austria-Hungary that Hitler lived in was once part of the German Confederation, and many of the people who lived there considered themselves to be German. Adolf tended to just go against whatever his father said, and since his father was an Austrian public official, Hitler got big into German nationalism. This enraged Adolf's father, who punished him severely. Around this time, a family tragedy struck. His 6-year-old brother, whom he loved a lot, died of measles when Adolf was 10, and was buried in the cemetery just across from their home. Around this time, neighbors reported a change in the young boy. Strange behaviors such as talking to trees and staying up late staring at the stars from the cemetery walls. He lost interest in religion, and his school grades started to decline, which enraged his father, who punished him severely. It also didn't help that he had just entered high school, and the cool city boys treated him like a rural peasant. He had to repeat a grade and had little interest in most school subjects, instead spending his time reading and drawing, which he was quite good at. One day his father said, "Son, someday you'll be a big balls public official like me." And Adolf replied, "No, father, I'm going to become an artist and soar high above the clouds with the eagles." This enraged his father, but by this time he was an old-ass man, so he just sort of let it go, and then died of a lung hemorrhage. Hitler just about passed his final semester and celebrated in the typical way, by getting blackout drunk and wiping his ass with the certificate. However, he didn't take the overall
I mean, this is seriously setting up the story of we're seeing like the loner in high school who ends up going out and, kind of committing some sort of like massive amount of like criminal activities. And this is what we're seeing within Hitler. And it's really kind of neat to see that because it's not really talked about his childhood so much. We more so see what he's done, in the late 1920s to, 1945 when he commits suicide. And we're seeing like kind of that aspect of who he is, and we're not seeing the childhood, but there's like the formative years. We're seeing the turbulence and tragedy that he is experiencing in those years.
Final school exam,
Craziness.
instead just dropping out. The now 16-year-old boy was unemployed, without much purpose in life, and for the next 3 years, he stayed that way. He spent most of his time at the opera with his only friend, August Kubizek. Kubizek later wrote his memories of the young Hitler and said he was passionately interested in many things, felt he was in many ways better than others his age, was quick to anger just like his father, and an incredible speaker once he was ranting. When he was 18, he said a very sad goodbye to his mother and went to Vienna to take the entrance exam for art school. He failed. Soon after, he had to return home. His mother was sick and her health was rapidly deteriorating. Hitler stayed by her side, and when she eventually died, the family doctor said he had never seen someone so overwhelmed with grief as Hitler was. Then Hitler returned to Vienna, still hoping to find a career in the arts, but he never did. Instead, without parental support, Hitler ended up on the streets. Now in his early 20s, he spent a few rough years living in and out of homeless shelters, making what little he could from selling postcards he painted. It's hard to pinpoint exactly when and how Hitler's extreme ideological beliefs formed, but his time in Vienna would have certainly played a role. Anti-Semitism.
I think we could safely say, based off what's being documented in this beginning, the first 4 minutes, is his childhood years was formative of how he became, extremely nationalist. He wanted to rebel against his father. There's a lot of tragedy and a lot of issues that happen. There's a lot of rejection in his life, so he felt misplaced. And we're seeing that. That seems to be the basis of some of the ideology that we're seeing, and then, obviously transpired and changed our world.
Was widespread in the city. The mayor, whom Hitler supported, was an outspoken anti-Semite. There were many right-wing anti-Semitic newsletters, which Hitler took a keen interest in. He bought into the conspiracy theories and became a firm believer in the idea that there are many races in constant struggle with one another, the purest of which were the German Aryan people, and the worst of which, he believed, were Jews. Since Austria-Hungary was a multi-ethnic empire full of lesser races, Hitler wasn't a fan. So when he was 24, he moved to Munich in Germany to avoid doing military service, and for 1 more year he was a drifter on the streets, until something huge happened. In 1914, long-standing tensions in Europe erupted into the First World War. Crowds across Europe celebrated the news. Within days, Hitler volunteered for the German army. The war gave him a purpose in life. His fellow soldiers gave him friendship and brotherhood. Despite the horrors of war, Hitler considered it to be the best time of his life. He was reportedly a brave soldier and was awarded the Iron Cross, first class. He was also very lucky and had many close encounters with death. His luck ran out in 1916, however, when an artillery shell injured his leg. He went back to Germany to recover and was outraged to find a general apathetic anti-war attitude among the exhausted and hungry German populace. With the war turning against Germany, he returned to the front lines, but was temporarily blinded by a British gas attack in 1918. A month later, still recovering in hospital, Hitler learned of Germany's defeat and surrender. The terms of the peace treaty were tough on Germany. It had to pay a lot of money and lose a lot of soldiers. These conditions weakened Germany and humiliated the German people. Europe's borders changed after the war too. New countries were formed out of Russia's lost territory, Austria-Hungary was dissolved, and there was one big new country splitting Germany into two. Hitler, seeing the country he loved humiliated like this, said that hatred grew in him for those responsible, by which he meant communists and Jews, who he believed had stabbed Germany in the back by spreading dissent and anti-war propaganda back home.
Very interesting to say the least. We're seeing all these conflicts going on. We're seeing the turbulent foundational years, and it's progressing into this. And, the victim mentality, we're seeing a blame put on with people. And granted, there's a lot more going on. I don't think anybody really, let me rephrase that. The majority of the population doesn't want war. War is a necessary evil at times because we are flawed human beings. That being said, there's some uniqueness in that. And this individual right here changed so much of the world that we see in today. And just the human carnage is absolutely unbelievable. And we saw that foundation of World War I being established. And then, the Treaty of Versailles and the humiliation that came because of it. This prideful people, their land stripped away, their money is basically gone, evaporated, they're in debt, they're enslaved, and they basically became completely opposite of what they believed to be. But anyways, part 2 is coming your guys' way. Please be sure to subscribe, turn on those bell notifications, drop a like, let me know what else you guys would like me to react to. And as always, stay healthy, stay happy, and have a blessed day. Peace.